You've got 72 hours, Grandma. After that, the marshal comes. Loretta Boone looked at the paper in her hand. Notice of eviction, stamped in red across the top like a wound, and then at the man who'd handed it to her. Not the marshal. A process server, 20-something, polo shirt. He'd already turned back to his car before she finished reading the first line. "Who sent this?" she called after him. "It's on the paper, ma'am." It was on the paper. The name was Garland Development Group. The property was 44 Birch Lane, Cedar Hollow, Tennessee. The house Loretta had lived in for 57 years. The house her husband, Walter, had carried her into in 1968, with sawdust still on his collar from finishing the porch that morning. The house she'd apparently been living in illegally for the last 3 years. She called her daughter Janine, 58, Atlanta, the one who handled business things, because Loretta had always said numbers made her eyes cross. "Janine, I got an eviction notice." "What? From who?" "Garland Development Group. It says they own the property. It says I have 72 hours. "That's impossible. That's your house." "That's what I thought, but the paper says different." Janine went quiet. The particular quiet of a woman doing math in her head and not liking the total. "Mom, when Keith handled the taxes last year, did he say anything about the deed?" Keith, Loretta's nephew, 44. The one who'd volunteered to help with Mom's finances after Walter died because Loretta was 80 and alone, and Keith was family, and family helps. Keith said everything was fine. "Mom, I need you to find the deed." "The deed is in the filing cabinet. Go look, right now." Loretta went to the filing cabinet in Walter's old office, the drawer where she kept everything important: the deed, the insurance papers, the marriage certificate, Walter's discharge papers from Korea. The drawer was empty. Not messy empty. Clean empty. Someone had removed every document. Recently. The dust outline of the folders was still visible on the metal bottom. "Janine, the drawer is empty." Oh, God. What did Keith do? "Mom, I think Keith transferred the deed." The story came out in pieces over the next 48 hours. Janine called Keith. Keith didn't answer. Janine called Keith's wife. Keith's wife said he'd left 3 months ago. Took the truck and didn't say where. Janine called a lawyer in Cedar Hollow, a woman named Rose Kimura, who did property law and who, upon hearing the situation, pulled the county records within an hour. The deed to 44 Birch Lane had been transferred from Loretta Boone to Keith Rydell in 2022. Keith had forged Loretta's signature, or convinced her to sign something she didn't understand. Then, 6 months ago, Keith had sold the property to Garland Development Group for $290,000. Keith had taken the money and disappeared. And Garland Development, which bought distressed properties and flipped them for commercial use, had filed the eviction the moment the sale cleared. "Can we fight it?" Loretta asked Rose. "We can try, but the transfer looks clean on paper. Keith had power of attorney. You gave it to him in 2021. For taxes, not for selling my house. General power of attorney covers all financial transactions unless specifically limited. Yours wasn't limited." "Because I trusted him." "I know, Mrs. Boone, but trust isn't a legal instrument." 72 hours. Loretta packed what she could. Clothes, Walter's toolbox, the quilt from their bed, a Bible. 2 photographs, their wedding, and the house the day Walter finished it. Quick favor. If you've ever lost everything to the one person you trusted to protect it, tap like and subscribe. because what Loretta Boone found in the woods behind Cedar Hollow didn't just give her a place to survive. It gave her something even her nephew couldn't steal. Janine drove up from Atlanta, moved Loretta into her car. They drove to the only place Janine could afford on short notice, a campground outside town, $15 a night, with a bathhouse and electric hookups for RVers they didn't have. They slept in the car. 2 nights. Loretta in the reclined passenger seat, Janine folded into the back. November in Tennessee. Cold enough that the windshield frosted from the inside. On the 3rd morning, Loretta said, "This isn't working." "I know, Mom." "I'm 83. I can't live in a Honda." "I'm looking for apartments, but everything in Cedar Hollow is either too expensive or won't take someone without credit history. And Keith destroyed yours when he stopped saying Keith's name." "Mom, I don't want to hear it. He stole my house. Saying his name over and over doesn't unbreak it. What I need is a place to stand." Loretta got out of the car, walked to the edge of the campground. The campground backed up to forest, state land, old growth, the kind of woods that had been here before the town and would be here after. A trail led into the trees, a deer path maybe, or something older. She followed it, not because she had a plan, because sitting in a car made her feel like something waiting to be towed, and walking made her feel like a person. The trail wound through oak and hickory for half a mile, then descended into a hollow, a natural depression between 2 ridges where the trees thinned and the ground leveled. And in the side of the ridge, half covered by brush and fallen leaves, was a door. Concrete frame, steel door, rusted but intact. Set into the hillside at ground level, the way root cellars are set, but bigger. Industrial. The kind of door that was built to keep something in or keep something out. Loretta pulled the brush aside, found a handle, pulled. The door didn't move. She pulled harder. Her shoulders protested. Her back made sounds it shouldn't. She picked up a rock, hammered the handle, once, twice. The rust cracked. The handle turned. The door groaned open. Cold air, dark, the smell of concrete and still water and sealed time. She turned on her phone flashlight, stepped inside. A corridor. Concrete walls, concrete floor, concrete ceiling. 8 feet wide, 7 feet tall. The air was cool, not cold, just the constant below-ground temperature that stays the same whether it's August or January above. The corridor went 20 feet, then opened into a room. The room was large, 30 feet by 40, maybe. The ceiling was arched, a barrel vault, engineered to distribute the weight of the earth above. Along the walls, metal shelves bolted to the concrete. A workbench, cabinets, electrical conduit running along the ceiling to junction boxes that still had switches. A generator room off to the right. She could see the bulk of a diesel generator through an open doorway. Dark and silent, but physically present, like a sleeping animal. A water tank, mounted on a platform near the back wall. Pipe running from it to a spigot over a utility sink. And in the center of the room, on the workbench, under a layer of dust so thick it looked like gray velvet, a binder. 3-ring, military olive drab. Stenciled on the cover, Civil Defense Shelter, Cedar Hollow Station, 7. Classified, Community Continuity Plan, Tennessee Office of Civil Defense, 1962. Loretta opened the binder. The pages were typewritten. The first page was a summary. Cedar Hollow Station 7 is designed to shelter 50 persons for a period of 30 days following nuclear attack or other catastrophic event. The facility contains sleeping quarters for 50, main chamber B, food and water stores for 30 days, diesel generator with 500 gallons fuel capacity, ventilation system with HEPA filtration, medical supply station, and communications equipment. Loretta looked up from the binder, looked around the room she was standing in. The front room, the operations center. Through doorways, she could see other chambers. She walked through them. Chamber B, sleeping quarters, 50 metal bunks stacked too high, bolted to the walls. Mattresses, canvas, military issue, musty but intact. Blankets folded at the foot of each bunk. Chamber C, food storage. Metal shelves floor to ceiling, mostly empty. Whatever rations had been stored here were gone, either removed officially or looted years ago. But the shelves were solid. The room was dry. Chamber D, medical. A counter with cabinets above. Some supplies remained. Bandages, sealed, yellowed but sterile. A first aid manual from 1962. Chamber E, communications. A radio console, dead, wiring intact. A desk with a chair. And at the back of the facility, a door she almost missed in the far wall of Chamber B. She opened it. Another room. Smaller. Private. An office, maybe, or the shelter commander's quarters. A desk, a cot, a locker. And on the desk, weighted down by a chunk of concrete, a letter. Handwritten, dated June 1963. To whoever finds this facility, my name is Colonel James Boone, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, retired. I supervised the construction of Cedar Hollow Station 7 in 1962 as part of the Tennessee Civil Defense Shelter Program. The facility was built to protect the citizens of Cedar Hollow in the event of nuclear war. It was completed, inspected, and sealed. The program was defunded in 1963. The shelter was never activated. The entrance was covered and the location removed from public records, as was standard procedure for decommissioned facilities. I am writing this letter because I believe this shelter may one day serve a purpose beyond its original design. It is structurally sound. It is dry. It is supplied with infrastructure that, with maintenance, could function for decades. If you are reading this, you are the first person to enter since the door was sealed. I trust you will use it well. Colonel James Boone. Loretta read the name 3 times. Colonel James Boone. Walter's father. Loretta's father-in-law. The man who died in 1978 when Loretta was 37 and Walter was 40, and who had never, not once in all the years she'd known him, mentioned that he'd built a nuclear bunker in the hills behind Cedar Hollow. She was standing in a shelter built by her husband's father, on land she didn't know he'd touched, reading a letter from a man who'd been dead for 47 years. Tap like if you believe that the people who came before us sometimes leave exactly what we need in exactly the places we'll find it. Because Colonel James Boone had built this shelter for a war that never came, and his daughter-in-law was about to use it for a war that did. Loretta drove back to the campground, found Janine asleep in the car. Get up, I found something. Mom, it's 7 a.m. I found a bunker. Janine blinked. A what? A Cold War bunker, in the ridge behind the campground. Your grandfather built it in 1962. Grandpa James? Army Corps of Engineers, Civil Defense Program, 50-person shelter, sleeping quarters, generator, water tank. He left a letter on the desk. Janine stared at her mother, then got out of the car. They walked the trail together. Janine saw the door, walked inside, stood in the operations center with the same expression Loretta had worn. The disorientation of finding something impossible in a place you thought you knew. "This is real," Janine said. "It's real. It's enormous. 50 bunks, 5 chambers, diesel generator. Does it work? Any of it?" "I don't know. But the structure is sound. No cracks, no water damage. The concrete is dry. Your grandfather built this to survive a nuclear bomb. Tennessee weather isn't going to bother it." "Mom, you can't live in a bunker." "I can't live in a Honda either. And this has a bathroom." "It has a utility sink." "That's more than I've got right now." Janine looked at her mother, 83, evicted, robbed by family, sleeping in a car, and standing in a bunker built by her dead father-in-law with the expression of a woman who'd just found the answer to a question she hadn't finished asking. "We need to find out who owns this land," Janine said. "State land. The campground manager told me everything behind the campground is state forest." "Then the bunker is on state property." "It's a decommissioned federal facility on state-managed land. Rose Kimura can figure out the legal status." Rose figured it out in 3 days. The shelter had been built under federal contract, transferred to the state when the Civil Defense Program was defunded, and subsequently forgotten. The state had no record of it. The decommissioning process in 1963 had removed it from all active inventories. "Legally," Rose said, "it's an abandoned federal improvement on state land. The state doesn't know it exists. The federal government relinquished it 60 years ago. It's in a gray zone." "Can I live in it?" "I wouldn't recommend making that argument in court, but I can file a petition for custodial use, essentially asking the state to let you maintain and occupy the facility in exchange for preservation. There's precedent for this with abandoned structures on public land." "How long?" 6 months for the petition, but in the meantime, nobody's going to check. Nobody knows it's there. Loretta moved in that afternoon. Not comfortably, not easily, but in. She set up the cot in the commander's quarters, Colonel Boone's room, which she now thought of as Walter's father's room, which made it feel less like trespassing and more like inheritance. Janine helped. They cleared dust, tested the water tank. Empty, but the pipe connections were intact. They filled it with jugs from the campground, tested the spigot. Water ran. Cold, clean, gravity-fed. The generator was another matter. Diesel, 1962 vintage. Military spec, which meant it was built to survive conditions that would kill any civilian equipment. But 60 years of sitting idle had gummed the fuel lines and corroded the battery connections. Loretta called Phil, the mechanic from town, the one who fixed everything and charged old ladies half price. Phil drove out, looked at the bunker, looked at the generator, looked at Loretta. "Mrs. Boone, your father-in-law built a nuclear shelter and nobody knew?" "Apparently it was classified." "Well, it's not classified anymore." Phil crouched beside the generator. "This is AMEP-002A. Military. These things are indestructible. New fuel lines, clean the injectors, fresh battery. She'll run." "How much?" "For a woman living in a bunker because her nephews stole her house. Parts only. I'll donate the labor." The generator ran by the end of the week. Lights came on in the bunker for the first time in 60 years. Fluorescent tubes, buzzing and flickering, casting the concrete chambers in the harsh white light of a facility designed for function, not comfort. Loretta didn't care about comfort. She cared about warm and dry, and hers. The bunker was all three. She set up Chamber C, the empty food storage room, as her living space, brought in the cot, the quilt, Walter's toolbox, hung the 2 photographs on the concrete wall with tape, put the Bible on a shelf. She cooked on a camp stove, ate at the workbench, read by the fluorescent light, walked the trail to the campground bathhouse every morning for a shower. And every evening, she sat at Colonel Boone's desk in the commander's quarters and read his letter again. The same words, the same trust. "If you are reading this, you are the first person to enter since the door was sealed. I trust you will use it well." "I'm using it, James," she said. "Not the way you planned, but I'm using it." Word spread, the way it does. Phil told someone, that someone told Janine's friend at the Cedar Hollow Gazette. The Gazette sent a reporter. The headline? "Evicted grandmother finds Cold War bunker built by her late father-in-law. Moves in." The story went wide, regional papers, then state, then AP Wire, because the combination was irresistible. Elderly woman, family betrayal, stolen house, secret bunker, dead colonel's letter, the layered irony of a shelter built for nuclear war being used to survive the quieter catastrophe of being robbed by your own blood. People came, not to gawk, to help. The same pattern Loretta had seen in small towns her entire life. Crisis creates community. A retired electrician rewired the lighting with LED panels and proper circuits. A plumber connected the water system to a spring Phil's nephew found 50 yards uphill. Gravity-fed, year-round, clean. A carpenter built a proper kitchen in Chamber C. Counter, shelves, a propane stove donated by the church. The campground manager, a woman named Faye, who'd watched Loretta sleep in a Honda for 2 nights and felt sick about it, ran an extension cord from the campground's power grid to the bunker entrance. Temporary. Illegal, probably. Nobody cared. Within a month, the bunker was livable. Within 2 months, it was comfortable. Within 3, Loretta had a functioning home inside a mountain that her father-in-law had hollowed out 60 years ago for a war that never came. The state petition was approved in April, faster than Rose predicted because the Gazette story had generated public support and nobody in state government wanted to be the person who evicted an 83-year-old woman from a bunker twice. The custodial agreement gave Loretta the right to occupy and maintain the facility for the remainder of her life. Cost? $1 per year. Condition? Preserve the structure and allow historical documentation. Keith was found in July. Texas. Working at a car wash under a different name. The $290,000 was mostly gone. Spent on a truck, a trailer, gambling debts, and the particular lifestyle of a man who'd stolen from his own aunt and assumed no one would look. Rose filed charges: fraud, elder abuse, forgery. Keith was extradited to Tennessee and arraigned in August. Loretta didn't attend. She was busy. The Historical Society had asked to document the bunker, and she was giving tours, walking visitors through the chambers, showing them the bunks, the generator, the colonel's letter. "My father-in-law built this because he believed in protecting people," she told every group. "He built it with his hands, with government money and army engineers, but with his vision. He believed that when the worst came, there should be a place where people could survive." She'd pause, look at the concrete walls, the arched ceiling, the bunks that had never held sleeping bodies until hers. The worst came. Not a bomb, a nephew. But this place did what James built it to do. It sheltered someone who had nowhere else to go. Janine came up every other weekend. She'd bring groceries, news, the legal updates from Rose. They'd sit at the workbench in Chamber A, the operations center that Loretta had turned into a living room with the quilt on the wall and Walter's photographs and a radio Phil had rigged to pick up the AM stations that played the music Loretta liked. "Mom, you could move to Atlanta. Live with me." "I could. But you won't." "I won't. Because of the bunker. Because of what the bunker means. Your grandfather built something and hid it in a hill and trusted that someday someone would need it. I needed it. I'm not leaving what saved me. You're 83, living underground. I'm 83, living exactly where I'm supposed to be." On a Tuesday in October, 1 year after the eviction notice, Loretta sat at Colonel Boone's desk. The letter was in front of her. She'd read it 100 times, every word familiar, every sentence a handshake across 60 years. She picked up a pen, turned the letter over, wrote on the back, "James, your daughter-in-law found your shelter. Not from a bomb, but from a betrayal. The bunker held. The generator runs. The water flows. Your son Walter would have laughed at all of this, his mother living in a hole his father dug. But he would have understood. Boones don't quit. We just find lower ground and hold it. Thank you for building what I needed before I knew I needed it. Loretta." She set the letter back on the desk, weighted it with the same chunk of concrete the colonel had used. Then she walked outside. The November air was cold. The trees were bare. The trail wound through the hollow to the campground and the road and the town where her house used to stand, and where a developer was building condos on the lot Walter had cleared with his own hands 57 years ago. She didn't look that direction. She looked up. The sky was enormous, the way sky looks when you've been underground and you come out and remember that the world is wider than any room, any house, any betrayal. She was 83. She lived in a bunker. She had a quilt, a Bible, a dead husband's toolbox, and a letter from a man who'd believed that the worst could come, and someone should be ready. Someone was ready. She'd been ready her whole life. She just didn't know it until the worst actually came.